Hey Yumi, I'm going back and forth between two computers. I'll get to you just now.
Okay, no problem. I'm just waiting for it to load.
Okay. Hey, Yumi,
Yes?
Bill can you send Bill the link to he for some reason, he can you send the link to I guess Bill and Darrell?
Yes.
Okay.
The webinar link or the Facebook live feed?
The webinar. So we are currently live right now. Okay.
Yes, we are live.
Okay. Well, welcome everyone. Good afternoon. I'm Stephen Tran from the Department of Rec and Parks. And I just want to wait a few seconds for Jorge, our interpreter. Great, thank you. So please welcome to this Prop 68 meeting. This is actually the first meeting about Prop 68, the Prop 68 project for MacArthur Park. And this is currently one of 4 meetings that we plan to provide for the community. So as part of today's meeting, we are live streaming this on Facebook Live. So in our chat box, you can find the actual link. And if you want to share that to your friends and family so they can tune in via Facebook, that'll be great. At some point in the future, we will also provide this via YouTube Live as well, not today, but we will have a recorded version of this meeting on our YouTube channel. And so just an introduction to today's panelists. So we have Luis Gonzalez. He's the Deputy Director of Community Organization from CD1, Gill City. We also have Darrell Ford. He's our Superintendent of Planning, Maintenance, and Construction at Rec and Parks. We also have Bill Jones, our Chief Management Analyst at RAP Grants Administration. We have Yumi Sangyan, Management Assistant at RAP Grants Administration. I'm Stephen Tran, your host and moderator for today. And we have Jorge, our translator from Barbia. So just to give you just a brief overview of today's meeting agenda. So we'll have Luis say a few things about MacArthur Park, about this project in the eyes of CD1. We'll also give you an overview of the department, what this Proposition 68 is about. We'll briefly go over the round 3 results from last year. We'll go over some of the type of projects that are eligible under Prop 68. And then Darrell Ford, from our planning, maintenance and construction group, will go ahead and give you an overview of the proposal, to MacArthur Park. And then we'll lastly provide a question and answer session. So, we can, give you, basically feedback and answers, to your questions in regards to the proposed project. So, Luis, do you want to say a few things?
Yeah, thank you so much, Stephen, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for making the time to be here. I know that right now we are going to a very difficult time, and we just wanted to thank you for taking the time, to listen to this presentation, and more importantly, to be involved in MacArthur Park, which is the heart of Westlake. And I know that many of you are eager, to see what we have in the terms of the city, on the improvements. I know that many of you have asked us or office a council member, about when we can see some improvements. So I know that many of you have been really involved in the in MacArthur Park area, and also in the park itself. I see that Daniel Morales from the park is joining us today, but also other community leaders like the Madres que Luchan. Is very important, to keep the community groups, that they use in MacArthur Park for all of this. And I want to thank RAP, the Recreation and Parks Department, for putting this together, and also for looking for ways on how we can improve this beautiful, beautiful park. I enjoy so much being in MacArthur Park, around the lake, and walking through the park. is one of the best things that I do during my week. And I think that seeing, all these improvements, it's just very exciting times. So please, listen to the presentation. And if you have any questions, please, or suggestions or input, any type of input, please do that, because this is the time to do this. This is the time to provide the department with all the recommendations and everything that you have seen in the park. And we are gonna have 3 more sessions that maybe we can announce later, but just let your neighbors, let your other members of your community know, those that can make it today. If they still wanna listen, if they still wanna bring input, please, invite them to the other sessions that we're gonna have this Friday, next Tuesday, and next Saturday. So with that, thank you so much, and I'm excited to hear the presentation. Thank you.
And thank you, Luis, for just helping us, doing the outreach and setting up the meetings. So it wouldn't be possible without your help. We were talking earlier about providing, this virtual meeting to the community. And so we want to make sure that, that we are, basically providing you with with good service and information that's helpful. A lot of, community members are Spanish speakers. So let us know if this is a format that works for you. And we'll go ahead and incorporate, to the best of our ability, your feedback. So I just want to, talk about, this particular series of meetings that we are having. So currently we have 4 meetings set up, and what we want to just the objectives of these meetings is just basically to let you know about, this particular funding opportunity that we are going to apply for MacArthur Park and renovation projects. The purpose of, another purpose of this meeting is just to develop a project that is best, suitable for this particular funding opportunity. So I'll go over some of the guidelines with you and let you know why this one of the reasons why this particular site was selected. And also, very important, we want to make sure that we solicit community feedback to make sure that these projects, suit your needs and interests. These meetings are just basically meant to be very process driven, and I'll go over why once we go through the meetings. So we have currently 4 meetings set up. Now these 4 meetings are meant to be, development meetings. We want to have maximum community input. Feel free to come back, and attend all 4, meetings, because the nature of this is that we are building projects, from meeting to meeting. So by the final meeting, we will have a final product. We'll have the final project, the final site plan that we will, provide to you, and so you can see what we're applying for. So just to give you a brief overview, the Department of Rec and Parks, its mission is to really improve the quality of life through our park system, and we provide these parks as well as just a myriad amount of services for the community. Now, just an overview of what Proposition 68 is. Basically, its main objective is to create new parks and new recreation opportunities in critically underserved communities. Proposition 68 was essentially approved by 57% of voters back in June of 2018. And we are in round 4, which is actually the final round of funding. And you may say, well, what happened to round 1, 2, 3? Well, actually the way the state made it so that Proposition 68 encompasses just round 3 and 4. So we are actually now in the final round of this proposition, which was passed 2 years ago. And the amount of grant funding that we are applying for, this is the total pot is $395 million for the state. This is actually a competitive grant, which means that although we are proposing this project and we are going to submit this project to the state for a funding consideration, there's no guarantee that we will basically be provided with a grant. This is a very, very competitive process, as I'll go over later. The maximum grant request per park is $8.5 million. And the applications are actually due on March 12th of next year, 2021. And just happened to be that, yesterday we received notice from the state that the deadline was extended. Initially, it was December 14th. So it's basically giving us an extra 3 months to further develop this project, which is great. Once let's say, assuming that this project goes through and it receives grant funding and it moves forward, the actual completion of the project, has to be, done by March of 2025. And I'll just go over, just briefly, some of the results from round 3 from last year. So overall, the state received 478 applications requesting $2.3 billion. That was quite a lot, given the fact that the state only had about $255 million to give away. The average grant request was 4.8, and the average amount of a grant was 4.1 million. So you can see that even though the maximum of grant that we can apply for is 8.5, the average grant was half that, less than half of that. So how many applications were awarded in round 3? Basically 62 of the 478 applications that were received. And the emphasis, from the state, the main objective was to create new parks. So that's why you see that out of the 62, 28 of them were to create, entire new parks. So that was a priority. The second priority was an expansion of parks, and the less, I guess the projects that received less consideration and priority were the ones that included renovations. So in order to be eligible, basically all of these projects need to be capital projects. And what that means is, we have to renovate or develop, new hard assets such as, playgrounds, athletic fields, pathways, restrooms, public art, lighting, basically what you see, as being physical assets in your park. And basically the way that, we are able to apply, for this park is because this park, qualifies under the state's really rigorous guideline as an underserved community, meaning that at the park, the residents that live, in the vicinity of the park have, 3 acres or less of parkland per 1,000 people. And the median income needs to be less than 56.9 thousand. So, based on the fact finder function that the state provides us to find out whether we qualify or not, we do. So we have the 1.04 acres per 1,000 people, well, that's well less than 3 acres, given the fact that this is a very dense urban community. And the median household income was 32,000, which is way less than the 56,000. So I'm going to turn this over to Darrell Ford, our superintendent for planning, maintenance, and construction.
Thanks, Stephen. Thank you, everybody. Again, this is Darrell Ford. And I, as Stephen had noted, I'm the superintendent for the planning, construction, and maintenance branch here at Recreation and Parks. So I'm going to spend a few minutes to walk everyone through. I think everyone's familiar with MacArthur Park, but to walk everyone through some background about the park, the improvements that are there, some projects that are currently in the works for MacArthur Park, and then to share with you some of the ideas that we had for the potential Proposition 68 application that the city would like to submit for the park for park improvements there. And as Stephen had said at the beginning of this presentation, the purpose of this meeting and the future meetings are for us to get input from the community so that we understand what types of improvements the community is looking for in the park. That those improvements are the types of improvements that are eligible under this grant criteria for us to apply for, so that we are prioritizing and developing an application that both can meet the state's guidelines and their requirements for a grant application, their timeline needs, so that a project that we can complete within the time the state has, and again, a project at the end of the day that results in functional improvements at the park that help meet the community's needs. So before I dive into that, I just wanted to do circle back to two quick housekeeping items. Just again to reiterate that there is translation available, so that if anyone needs to, you can go ahead and listen to the translation. And then again, to also reiterate a note that was made in the chat, that if you have any questions, to please add those questions in the Q&A box. So after we go through the presentation here and we present what we'd like to show you all tonight, any questions you may have for us as we're here today, we can help to answer those right now. So you can go ahead and put those in the Q&A so that when we get to the end of this presentation, we can circle back and hopefully address any questions you may have or any follow-up you may have to items that we presented. So I'll just go ahead and get started here with the slide that's before you, which again is just a very brief and general overview of what we know is at MacArthur Park. So of course we have the wonderful MacArthur Park Lake. We do have the MacArthur Park Community Center that's located off of 6th Street. We have our wonderful pavilion that we use for performing arts and free concerts. We have the synthetic meadow that's located on the north side of the park, north of Wilshire. That, as everyone knows, is also used for sports activities. It's our synthetic sports area. We have two different playgrounds in MacArthur Park, and I'll circle back to this later. There's the playground that's immediately west of the community center building, and there's a playground that's between the Levitt Pavilion and the synthetic meadow. So we have two distinct playground areas currently in MacArthur Park. We also have a number of public restrooms, including the restroom that's off Alvarado Street and the restrooms that are located adjacent to the Levitt Pavilion. The park, of course, is crisscrossed with many walking paths. Many of these pathways are historic and follow the previous development patterns in the park. But of course, the park has a number of walking paths and spaces that are used by the community, including the two underpasses underneath Wilshire Boulevard. And of course, the park is beautifully landscaped, and there's benches and there's various picnic areas and seating areas all throughout MacArthur Park. All the items I think that really draw all of us to use this space. And then finally, MacArthur Park is known for its variety of public art. There's a number of statues in MacArthur Park. The park itself is a city historic cultural monument. So the park, beyond just being a functional recreational space and a functional community space, is also clearly a place where the city has, over time, decided to showcase various pieces of public art that have been donated to us. So just a very general overview of sort of the recreational open space improvements that we currently have at MacArthur Park. So in the next slide, I'm going to go ahead and talk about some of the things that are currently going on at MacArthur Park. And just really wanted to talk about two projects that are going to be happening in the near term. I think it's important just to talk about some of the work that we're going to be doing in the park, because I think it'll help set the context for why we have picked some of the items we think are good to prioritize for Prop 68. So just very briefly, there are two projects that are going to be kicking off relatively soon in MacArthur Park. The first one, as you can see in this presentation, is the replacement of one of those two playgrounds that we currently have in the park. So we already have funding to replace the large lower playground that's located just west of the community center building. We plan to move forward soon with the replacement of that playground, which is funded in part with community development block grant funds. So we do have funding in place, and we're working on plans to go ahead and upgrade and replace that playground located just west of the community center building. Second, the other major project to bring up is the city has recently received funding for a significant rehabilitation of MacArthur Park Lake. Now that project is proposed to modernize the existing storm drain infrastructure, as well as make a variety of aesthetic and landscaping improvements all around MacArthur Park and in MacArthur Park Lake. The primary focus of that is a project that helps us capture, treat, retain, and reuse stormwater flows. The city is going to be working to develop a project that'll capture a lot of the stormwater that goes through the storm channels here off Alvarado and other corners of the park, to treat it and to put it back into the lake, and then ultimately, as the lake drains, back into the ocean. So it's a stormwater capture and improvement and treatment project that'll also result in improvements to the lake edge, the lake shore, and some of the pathways around there, the lake as well. So just highlighting that to let you know that the city has, moving forward through other efforts, identified funding and is moving forward with initiatives here at the park to tackle two of those major elements. So again, the playground, one of the two playgrounds is already proposed to be replaced and is funded. And again, the city has also received funding to address MacArthur Park Lake, as well as some of the stormwater improvements to be made around the park. So I thought it'd be important just setting the context for some of the things the city is already working on in the park, to give you an idea of why we came up with some of the scope ideas that we did for the Proposition 68 application. So going forward, just want to briefly walk you through the items that we're proposing to do as a part of the Proposition 68 application. So this slide is just, again, these are the ideas that the city has come up with, looking back at some of our previous plans for MacArthur Park and recognizing some of the challenges that the park has had over the years and some of the requests for new improvements. We've developed this scope of work before you that I'll walk through briefly, and then we'll talk about again in more detail for some improvements that we think would make for a competitive Proposition 68 application that would give us a high chance in a very competitive environment of getting funded, but also that would make very important functional, aesthetic, and recreational improvements to MacArthur Park that we think are very necessary. So I'll briefly walk through each of those scope items and then talk about them a little bit more in detail. So our project here consists essentially of 5 major elements. We are proposing, the first one is the renovation of the Wilshire Alvarado entrance to the park. So as many of you may be familiar, a few years ago, the city did improvements to the corner of 7th and Alvarado, where we made improvements to that entrance of MacArthur Park. Those improvements were long planned by the city and were worked on by the city's Bureau of Engineering with Recreation and Parks. So as a part of that, we also had looked at several of the other entrances to MacArthur Park. And one of those was the corner of Wilshire Boulevard and Alvarado. So we would like, as a part of this Proposition 68 application, to submit for the improvement of that entrance to the park, which would include new landscaping, new pathways, and new seating, and also to address those that small parking area that we all know is that corner of the park, to eliminate that parking area, but essentially to bring the paths over there and the landscaping over there to make it as beautiful as the entrance is over on 7th and Alvarado. So we'd like to really improve the entrance of MacArthur Park as it faces Wilshire and Alvarado, and that we hope would bring the entire side of the park between Wilshire and 7th, really upgrade it, make sure we have pathways, seating areas, and landscaping that's appropriate for the historic nature of the park. Second, we'd like to tackle the other entrance of the park on Parkview and 7th. This is what we're calling the renovation of the southwest entry. So as we're familiar with that corner of the park at Parkview and 7th, there are several pieces of public art that are located in that corner of the park. So again, very similar to what was done on the 7th and Alvarado exit, or entrance to the park. We'd like to fix the park pathways in that corner over there, to redo the landscaping and the seating over there as well. So again, to really reinvigorate another one of the iconic entrances into MacArthur Park. We'd like to fix what we're calling the southwest entry of the park, which again is the 7th and Parkview entry. Along with that entry improvements, we'd like to add a new playground to that corner of the park. So for the Parkview and 7th portion, we'd like to add a brand new play area, which would bring it to be our 3rd play area in MacArthur Park. So the idea is that as a part of those improvements to the walkway, the landscaping, and the pathways in that corner of the park, we'd like to add a brand new play area. The 4th element of the project is the replacement of one of our existing freestanding restrooms. This takes us back to the other corner of the park, which is the Alvarado Street side of the park. There is a freestanding restroom that is between 6th and Wilshire that we would like to demolish and replace with a new restroom building that it is safe and fully accessible to the community. Second, we'd like the next element, which is the 5th element of the project, we'd like to add 2 new restrooms into MacArthur Park. One restroom would again be located in the southwest corner of the park near Parkview and 7th. So this would be kind of the completion of that corner of the park. So again, we'd add a new restroom building to that corner of the park, which would mean the Parkview and 7th entrance would now have a new restroom, a playground, all new pathways and landscaping. And we'd also like to add another new restroom in the corner of the park over by the Levitt Pavilion. We're very well aware that the restrooms that are over there by the Levitt are heavily used, and that during concerts and other events in the park, often we have to bring in portable restrooms. So we would like to add additional restroom facilities in the Levitt and over that corner of the park by Levitt Pavilion. So again, we would like to redo the existing restroom in Alvarado between Wilshire and 6th and add 2 new restrooms in the park. Finally, just general items we would do on both of these corners of the park, both the southwest entry of the park, as well as the Wilshire and Alvarado corner, we'd like to do a lot of landscaping and lighting improvements. We know that there is a strong desire to add improved lighting at MacArthur Park. So as a part of our grant, we'd like to make sure that both of those iconic entrances are well lit, and as well as any additional lighting we can do in the park to help make the park a safer environment, but also to make sure that as people are in the park at night, the park is well and sufficiently lit. So we do know that lighting is a very critical element for this park. So we want to make sure that our grant allows us sufficient funding to certainly light up the 2 corners we're proposing to improve, but as much additional lighting as we can also do in MacArthur Park to make that park a safe place to be, like in evenings like tonight where it gets dark pretty early, but we know people are still in the park. So that's just a very general overview of the elements that the city has put forth that we think would make for a competitive Proposition 68 application. So this last slide here is just, again, a very short recap of those elements. And this provides a little bit more context if you're not that familiar with the park, where each one of them is located. So again, I'll just walk through what you're looking at here in the presentation of those major park elements. So we'd like to add, again, new freestanding restrooms over by the Levitt Pavilion. So if you're looking at the presentation, there's an orange arrow pointing approximately to where we'd like to put a new restroom in one area of the park. We would like to, again, replace the freestanding restroom on the Alvarado side of the park between Wilshire and 6th. And the blue arrow on your screen is pointing to where that restroom building is if you're not familiar with it. We'd like to renovate the Wilshire boathouse entry. So again, the corner of the park at Wilshire and Alvarado, the southern portion of that intersection, so where the boathouse is, we'd like to used to be, we'd like to renovate that corner of the park to give it another grand entrance like at 7th and Alvarado. And then finally, what we're calling the renovation of the southwest entry. This again is the Parkview and 7th entry of the park. And the green arrow on your screen points to where those improvements would be. And over there again, beyond the landscaping and the pathway and the lighting, we'd like to add a brand new children's play area and a new freestanding restroom building. And then finally, just general improvements in the park for landscaping and lighting, concentrated on both of those entry areas. But again, additional lighting along the park and park pathways as we can in the grant application. So that's just, again, a very general overview of some of the elements we thought would make for a competitive Proposition 68 application, would bring some well-needed improvements to the park, and would help build on a lot of the other work that's gone here to bringing necessary capital improvements to MacArthur Park. So now we'd like to move into the questions and answers portion of tonight's presentation. So hopefully, again, that was a good overview for everyone with some of the ideas that the city had for improvements at MacArthur Park via a Proposition 68 grant. But of course, we're here again, as Stephen said at the beginning of this presentation, to hear from you, ideas, thoughts you may have, any questions or comments you may have on what's being proposed, because at the end of the day, we'd like to have improvements that, again, are really meeting what the community's needs are at MacArthur Park, and that are focused on making the park a better and more improved space for the community to use. And again, thanks to everyone for being here tonight, and we look forward to any questions you may have for us to answer for you.
Thank you, Darrell, for your presentation. And I'm just looking at the chat box. If you'd like to have, ask any questions, please do so using the chat box. So one question is will you be doing any improvements to the recreation building?
Hi, again, this is Darrell Ford. So we are not proposing, as a part of this Proposition 68 application, to do improvements to the recreation building. Just to give you some context, one reason why that is because of the timelines and the requirements of the Proposition 68 grant. We wanted to focus on elements that we know we can deliver within the state's mandatory guidelines and that we can accomplish with the funding that's available. As we all know, the community center building that's located in the park is a very old building and likely would require a significant investigation in order to come up with the scope of work. So we really wanted to focus on elements we thought would both be well-needed enhancements to the park, but also improvements we could deliver within the time frame. But certainly, if there are improvements that the community would like to see in the recreation center building, regardless if they could be done as a part of this grant application or other efforts, we would like to hear from you what those are so that we can work towards identifying those and figuring out what funding streams would be the most appropriate to do those improvements. So if you have any suggestions in the chat, we certainly would like to hear that for the recreation community center building that's there at the park.
Thank you, Darrell. We have a question that is written in Spanish. I'd like to know if Jorge can translate that to us.
I can do it, Jorge. I can do that. So basically, the question is that, well, there's a suggestion, right, for the project. He's saying that it's very interesting, but I think the most important thing here is the security and safety of the park. So it could like last, right? Like I'm assuming if we don't build something that is not gonna last. So in terms of addressing the security and safety of the park.
Okay, I could just chime in with a kind of a general response to that question, and thank you very much. So, as Stephen had spoke about at the beginning of the presentation, the Proposition 68 funds can only be used for capital improvements. So our goal would be through this grant, beyond bringing landscape and other improvements to the park, we think that security lighting in the park and adding additional lighting is one element that we can pay for with the Proposition 68 grant that we think will really help to bring additional eyes into the park and make everything in the park a lot more visible. So we're very much aware of the safety concerns at the park. We believe that additional lighting is one key way of doing that. The other thing I just want to highlight is that's also a little bit of the thought process that went into why we wanted to put a playground on the corner of 7th and Parkview. Because I think, as we all know, as spaces are more activated and more used by the community members, that positive activity helps keep negative activity from happening in certain points of the park. So we believe that making the southwest corner more of an active community use space will bring more people and more eyes over there and make that corner of the park as vibrant as other corners of the park. So we are very much aware of the safety and security concerns. We think lighting is a high priority for this park. And we certainly think that doing everything we can to make sure the park is fully activated on all corners will help add some additional safety to the park just from all the additional eyes and users that'll be there.
Thank you, Darrell. We have another question. Is there any way for a synthetic meadow in front of the Levitt Pavilion? CD1 spends a lot every year for sod for free concerts.
That's a great suggestion. I think that's something we can look into.
Thank you. Next question is, would it be possible to have a playground splash pad installed on the southwest corner of the park, similar to Hope and Peace Park?
Sure. So we are only proposing to put a playground in that corner of the park, not a playground and splash pad. There's one main reason why we are only proposing to put forth the playground. Just to be very frank with everyone on this meeting, is splash pads are a very high maintenance item for the city and for the department. They require a lot of specialty work and staff that are necessary to enable us to be able to maintain and operate those splash pads. Given the city's current fiscal environment, our concern is that we may not have the resources in the future to be able to maintain additional splash pads. So since our goal is to make sure we have a project that results in a park that's functional and is a good park for everyone to be able to use, what we don't want to do is essentially to sort of take on elements where we think we may have challenges maintaining them in the future. There's nothing worse than building a capital improvement and not having adequate resources to be able to maintain it. So while of course the department is a strong believer in splash pads, is why we have so many of them, we just don't think in this current environment that splash pads are good items for us to focus on until the city's fiscal health improves. So we concur that splash pads meet a great need, but we want to make sure that we build improvements that we feel confident we can maintain and operate so the park remains a beautiful space.
Thank you, Darrell. Let's see. Would there be not any changes to the quality of the water from the lake?
Sure. So as I had mentioned in a previous slide, there is a separate project that is going to be kicking off relatively soon about the improvements to the MacArthur Park Lake. So our proposed Proposition 68 grant application would not be focused on any lake improvements. That upcoming project that is going to, it is 100% focused on improving the water quality of the lake. That is the project that's going to go ahead and try to address the lake water quality to making the lake a healthier lake and a fully functioning water body. So it won't be this project that's doing that, but a project that'll be kicking off very soon, likely around January or February, for the MacArthur Park Lake Rehab Project.
Great. And just to chime in, just to add to what Darrell had said earlier, we have, within the department, numerous grants that are addressing different parts of the park. For example, the lake, and there was also mention of community block grant. So we have numerous funding sources, and so as we talk about the scope for this particular Prop 68 application, we'll also keep in mind that there are other things that are happening as well, and other funding sources that are being used to fund them. Okay. I think that's the final question. Does anybody else have any question?
Stephen, I am seeing a comment question in the Q&A section from Daniel Morales.
Okay.
It says, I'm happy and excited about this tremendous opportunity of improvement. I'm the president of the MacArthur Park Advisory Board, and besides that, I'm the founder of an organization that has been using the park for the last 20 years. Our membership is 3,500 families that use the park. How can we help the Parks and Recreation to make this effort and proposal a reality?
I'll start off with a response, and then sorry, Bill, go ahead.
Hi, Stephen. This is Bill Jones. So I think, one of the things that we can do is certainly work with your organization. If you have a letter of recommendation, while those are not typically asked for. We could certainly include that in our grant application and submit that with our paperwork. Certainly, we're excited that any community that is excited about this type of a development, the more support we can show from the community, the state likes to see that type of effort going forward. So we welcome that support. We thank you very much, and I'll turn it back to Stephen or Darrell.
Yeah, this is Darrell again, and thank you. I guess my response to that also would be, I think what would be very helpful for us is taking the opportunity to take this presentation that we did tonight, sharing it with your group and with other interested parties, because at the end of the day, the more feedback we get, the better off we are. It'll make for a better and a stronger project for the people who are actually in the park, the users who are there all day, those families that use and love the park, to give us the good feedback that we need so that we are scoping out a project that, again, will both be a successful project from a grant perspective, but also is one that'll really be helping to meet the community's needs. So sharing the presentation, helping to gather additional interest in the upcoming meetings. I know Stephen had shared a slide earlier in the presentation about upcoming meetings, and any other guidance you may have about community groups that we can outreach for to help improve participation in these meetings, or that you think would be good opportunities for us to communicate with, because they may have other ideas that we can incorporate into our project concepts. Those would be very helpful for us as we move forward through this process.
Thank you, Bill, and thank you, Darrell. So I don't see any more question on the Zoom chat box. Yumi, do we have anything else on Facebook or?
No, there are no more questions on the Facebook live feed.
Okay, so all right, so Darrell, do you want to say anything before we conclude?
Yeah, I would like to some final comments about the importance of being engaged with this project. I think all of you that they are right now connected with this, they're part of an organization, they're part of a group, they're part of a group of neighbors. And it's very important, that like Bill Jones said, that you let your neighbors and everybody that know that this is happening, because like Bill said, the more people that get involved with this, the more people that show support, the more people that are engaged, the stronger the application is going to be. So I think it will be very important, that if you have an organization to engage, and that we have 3 more sessions, if you still, are thinking that maybe, occurs to you tomorrow, where something that you forgot to mention today, there's other 3 opportunities to do so. And it's important, that you let, everybody about this, and that to join us, in the next 3 sessions. And in that way we can craft a better application. So thank you.
Thank you, Luis. So unless if anybody else, Darrell, Bill, you have any other closing remarks?
No, my only closing remark is also to just reiterate thank you to everyone for participating tonight, and just again, any sharing of this information with your community and your groups. That's all stuff that will help us make a better application, and ultimately get us all to the goal of being able to bring additional funding to MacArthur Park for some of these well-needed improvements. I just want to thank everyone for taking time out of your evening to meet with us.
Hello, everybody, and I'd like to echo Darrell's comments. Thank you all for joining us. One of the things we recognize is we are the stewards of the park, but this park is really your community, and we want to make certain that you're involved and that your ideas are captured on paper. So please get us your ideas. As Stephen has mentioned, even if we can't do it through the Prop 68 grant, we do want to keep those ideas active and look for other funding opportunities to ensure that we make your park fit for your community, that it's something that you are going to use, you're going to embrace, and that you're going to love. So with that, thank you all for joining us tonight.
Yes, and so we'll have this meeting, recorded and available through our YouTube channel. So, you may, disseminate this to, your friends and family for them to experience the meeting. Our next meeting will be this coming Friday at 10 a.m. So you can, basically, basically tune in via the same link that was provided to you, either via, Zoom or Facebook. We'll try to see if we can get the YouTube live going for the upcoming meeting. And we thank you for tuning in and have a great evening. And thank you, Jorge and Luis, for, being part of this presentation. And thank you, Yumi, too.
Thank you. Have a good
Thank
night.
you. Bye now.
Thanks, everybody.